Hi, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about something really fundamental, how we organize knowledge and education. We're going to look at that journey from learning things in neat, separate boxes, math over here, history over there, to more connected, integrated ways of thinking that, let's be honest, look a lot more like the real world. So yeah, let's explore how we get from subjects to systems. The philosopher Edgar Morin, well, he just completely nailed the core problem here. He basically argued that when we break learning into all these isolated little pieces, we totally lose the ability to see the bigger picture. This quote, it just perfectly frames the challenge we're trying to tackle. How do we get from a pile of fragmented facts to a truly holistic understanding? And that really leads us to this giant question. Think about it for a second. Huge issues like climate change or economic inequality, they don't fit neatly into a science box or a social studies box, right? They're messy, they're interconnected. So this whole explainer is really about exploring better ways to organize what we learn for the complex world we actually live in.
To do that, we're going to break down 4 key approaches for assembling this huge puzzle of knowledge. You can think of them as steps on a ladder or a continuum, starting with the most basic and building up to the most integrated. Each one gives us a totally different way of seeing the world.
Okay, first up is the one we all grew up with, the disciplinary approach. This is your classic school model. You've got separate, distinct subjects. You go to math class, bell rings, then it's history, then biology. Each subject is its own little world, with its own rules, its own tools. It's the foundation, for sure, but it's really just the starting point. So next, we build on that foundation with a multidisciplinary approach. Here, you're looking at one topic from a few different angles, but, and this is key, they stay separate. Imagine a panel of experts. A biologist, an artist, and an economist all talk about a forest, but they don't really talk to each other. They each give their own report, side by side. It's adding more pieces, but we're not connecting them yet. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting, because here is where the connections finally start to form. With an interdisciplinary approach, those experts aren't just talking in the same room. They're actually working together. They integrate their knowledge to create something totally new, a synthesized understanding that you just couldn't get from one perspective alone. They're literally building a bridge between their islands of knowledge. And finally, we get to the transdisciplinary approach. This is the most integrated of them all. See, instead of starting with subjects and then trying to connect them, you start with a real-world problem or a big theme, something like our relationship with nature. The different disciplines then just become tools to help understand that big idea. And in that process, the boundaries between them, well, they just start to dissolve. This table really makes it all crystal clear. Let's stick with our forest example. In a disciplinary approach, a biologist studies the ecosystem. Simple. Multidisciplinary, well, the biologist, the artist, and the economist each handed a separate report. Interdisciplinary. Now we're talking. The biologist and the economist actually work together, and they co-author a report on the economic impact of biodiversity loss. And finally, transdisciplinary. Students dive into deforestation by exploring that huge theme of our relationship with nature, pulling from biology, art, economics, whatever they need. You can just see the shift from isolated facts to these rich, integrated solutions. Okay, so this isn't just some abstract theory, right? Let's look at how a major educational framework, the International Baccalaureate, you've probably heard of it as the IB, puts this whole continuum into practice. It's actually amazing how the IB maps its programs right onto this continuum. For the youngest kids in the primary years program, it's driven by a transdisciplinary structure, organized around these big, globally significant themes. Then you move into the middle years program, and the emphasis shifts to interdisciplinary learning, connecting subjects through global contexts. Finally, in the diploma and career-related programs, it's mostly discipline-based, but with these core elements like the extended essay that are definitely multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary. So students literally journey through these approaches as they get older. And listen to this powerful insight from a teacher who's actually doing this work. They see that this integrated approach makes learning more authentic because, as they put it, kids' lives aren't divided up into neat subjects. That's so true. When learning mirrors life, it's just more meaningful and, frankly, more effective. Now, that word transdisciplinary, it can be a little tricky because it gets used in a couple of distinct ways. So let's just take a second to clarify this, because it's a really important distinction, especially when we talk about how academics use the term versus how the IB's primary years program uses it. Okay, let's break it down. On one hand, you have the academic view. It's all about solving complex real-world problems. And to do that, it brings researchers together with people from outside the university, community groups, NGOs. The whole goal is to bridge that gap between academic research and real-world action. On the other hand, the IBPYP view is really a teaching approach inside the school. It's about exploring knowledge between, across, and beyond subjects, starting with themes to give students a holistic view of the world. So one is about external collaboration to solve problems, the other is about an internal curriculum designed to build understanding.
So why get into the weeds with all these different approaches? Why does any of this matter? Well, it matters because this is all about equipping students with the skills they are absolutely going to need for a future that is anything but simple and siloed.
The benefits are just so clear and compelling. This kind of integrated learning helps get students ready for the complex jobs of the future. It fosters the kind of critical thinking you need to handle ambiguity. It gives students a voice, it connects them to their communities, and it encourages them to think about ethical concerns. And it does all of this while maintaining a high level of academic rigor. You see, these aren't just soft skills, they are essential skills. Which, of course, brings us right back to where we started. If the challenges our students are going to inherit are deeply interconnected, then the most important question we can ask is this: are we really preparing them for that reality? By moving from isolated subjects to integrated systems, we're not just tweaking a curriculum, we are fundamentally redefining what it means to be ready for the world.